Okay, so today we'll discuss regarding AWS CLI. CLI stands for Command Line Interface. So instead of GUI, we can provision even AWS resources using the AWS CLI also. What is that meaning is through the graphical user interface, we need to follow each and every step. Next, we need to click. Some sort of automation can be performed even through the AWS CLI. Say here through the command line we can post and AWS has provided AWS CLI command line tool. Then like we need to provide through the AWS CLI we are going to provision our resources. Okay, so now here we need to provision the resources for the automation. The beginner step is through CLI. Later we'll go for a cloud formation, Terraform, these kind of scripts, and finally through programmatically also we are going to provide. So whereas AWS CLI is a unified tool like where we can provision all AWS resources from the command line. Instead of using AWS management console, we can perform most of the provisioning or maybe like most of the administrative activities like launching an EC2 instance or maybe terminating the EC2 instance, stopping the instance or creating the bucket, copy the bucket, upload the bucket like replication jobs. So these kind of objects we can perform. Okay, so then on the Windows devices or on the Mac, Linux, we can install AWS CLI. From that, we can manage. And in order to use the AWS CLI, the backend is Python also is the required. So Python also is required. Then we have the EC2 or we have the command line tools. So from that, we can manage these command lines. Okay, then additional to that, instead of installing that AWS CLI, AWS is providing one more solution called as AWS Cloud Shell. So what is the concept of the Cloud Shell is, say using the Cloud Shell, say it's a browser-based command line tool. Normally, we need to take a Linux instance, Windows instance or Mac instance. On top of that, we need to install the CLI. But if we go for the AWS Cloud Shell, is a browser-based command line tool. And if you log into the AWS management console on that browser session, if you open AWS Cloud Shell, automatically its authentication also is going to happen with our AWS credentials is going to authenticate, and we can manage those AWS resources also from the browser itself. Okay, so what is the advantages in the AWS CLI? We need to set up those from scratch, but here we no need to set up anything, and we no need to store the access keys also. Okay, so that's we can open from the management console itself. We can open. What is the advantage with the Cloud Shell is that is having pre-installed AWS CLI SDKs are already there, and by default all the commands whatever you have stored is going to store in the storage also we are getting in the back end, and we can upload the scripts also and download the scripts also we can perform. Okay, so that's the reason we are going to use instead of AWS CLI, Cloud Shell also we are going to use. Okay, so Cloud Shell also we can perform. Okay, so then we need to install Cloud Shell on your mission. So today practice more on EC2 level, IAM level, S3 level, like different operations. Instead of performing from GUI, try to perform from the AWS, even VPC related also, we need to perform from the CLI, these operations need to be performed. From the CLI, these operations need to be performed. So first time log into AWS. Now I'll take one EC2 instance. So on that EC2 instance, I'm installing AWS CLI. Even on our like local Windows also we can install, but I'm taking a Linux instance. On that we install. I'm taking an Ubuntu instance. I have downloaded directly PPK file itself. So now, what is the command line tool is AWS is the command line tool. That means here that AWS CLI is not found. So that is the reason it is not installing. Sometimes in the APT repository, we don't have directly AWS CLI. Then using the Snap, like we'll install that. Snap is also one of the packager. Yeah, so AWS CLI has no package candidate. Yeah, it's not there. Say by default in the APT, we are not getting that package. Through Snap, I'm going to install. So here we need to give classic also. Yeah. So here we have classic, but we need to include classic also. Okay. So now the AWS CLI version like 2.31.19 has been installed. I'll check the AWS version. Now this is the AWS is the command line tool. So AWS, we have AWS CLI is 2.3.19 and its backend it's using Python also with the 3.1, 3.7 and this is the Linux version we have. Okay, on top of this is going to install. On top of that, this is going to install. Okay, so once we set up this, like we can run the AWS CLI commands, and from this we can provision whatever the resources we want to do it. Otherwise, say here if you come to this, we have the Cloud Shell. On the other new tab, I'm going to open that Cloud Shell also I'm going to open. Okay, so here also, like we are in the EU North one. Here you no need to log in also, and all these details have been automatically it's entered here. So then here what we need to do is in the GUI we are going to authenticate with our username and password or IAM credentials. But now when we are want to log into AWS, say here we need to configure our AWS CLI. For the first time, we need to configure AWS CLI. So for that purpose, we are going to use the command AWS configure is the command we are using. So when we type the AWS configure, like it's need to authenticate our details. So when I type the AWS configure, it is asking me the access key, secret key, then region, output format. Say by default, we don't have the username and password. For the programmatic access or for CLI access, we are going to use the access key and the secret key. And every user can get those access key and the secret key. And based on that, the communication is going to happen. Based on that, the communication is going to happen. Okay, so those details we are going to enter here. Those details we are going to enter. Okay, so now here, what are the four details we need to enter here is, what are the four details we need to enter? So we need to enter the access key, secret key, region, and output format we need to provide. So these are all the four details. So we need to provide. Okay, so then like once we specify these all the details are going to stored in the local like if you log in with the home Ubuntu. Okay, so in the home Ubuntu dot AWS directory, we are going to store all these details. Okay, so now here we have all these details are going to store in the directory home Ubuntu dot AWS is one of the hidden directory. So in this we have two files. One is config file and the second one is credentials file. In that file, those details are going to store. So now here I'm going to set up this AWS configure. Then that's going to prompt me for AWS access key. So now those details I can get it from the my access credentials. I can get it. So from the security credentials, I'm going to get those details. So at any point of time, we can create two sets of access keys. Yeah, here I need to create a new access keys. I'm creating for the CLI. I'm going to use this. For the CLI, I'm going to use this. And then this is my access key and this is your secret key. Only for the first time you are getting the secret key. Next time we can't see. That's the reason keep it in a safe location. Then default region name, we are in the region. Stockholm, EU, North 1, I think. U-North-1. Then output format, when we run the commands, what is the output format you want, either in the JSON format, YAML format, table format. So those details we need to specify. That is, have given in the YAML format. Now, I'm in my home directory, like a home Ubuntu. Then in this, if I see the files, I don't get any files. Okay, so by default, we have a hidden file. That is the reason in the AL, it is going to show .aws. If I go to the .aws, then here we have two files. Okay, so then config. So in the config, I have region and output details, and the default is the profile name. We can create even with the multiple profiles also we can work. We can work with the multiple profiles also. We are going to work on that. Then saying the credentials is going to store. So what are the details are stored in the credentials? Our access key and the secret key has been started in those details. Like access key and secret key has been started, say in these details. Okay, so total 4 details. One is in the config, second one is in the credentials. Those details have been stored, and by default, this is with the default name. Those details are stored. And if you want to work with the multiple profiles, we can create the named profiles. Say, suppose I have a use case, I want to work with the different like regions, different accounts, then we can configure with the different profiles we can create, and that profile name we can use. But if you don't specify any profile name, that is going to use that is going to use default profile itself. It is going to use. So by default, if you don't specify anything, that is going to use the say default profile itself is going to store. Okay, so the default profile itself is going to store for that. Okay. So then even we can create the different named profiles also will create in this use case. The different name profiles also will create. But as of now, using the AWS CLI, I want to create an EC2 instance. I want to create an EC2 instance. So now here we can do the launching, and AWS is our command line tool name. So now here we can launch list. Most of them, they have given the documentation. The prerequisites is we have installed the CLI and we have configured the CLI also. And with the user with whom we have given that IAM permissions, that user should have the permissions to create that resources. That means if the user doesn't have the permissions to create EC2, then even from CLI we can't create. Okay, and for the EC2 instance, before we can create a key pair and security group, or we can use those existing details also. We can use those existing details also we can share. Okay, so then now here we have a what is the command is so we are using one command AWS EC2 run hyphen instances image ID, that AMI we need to give, count we need to specify, instance type, key pair name, security groups, and subnet depends upon our requirement. So we need to provide all these details. Then automatically an instance is going to be provisioned from that. An instance is going to be provisioned from that. Okay, so now what is the command here? What is the command? AWS EC2 run hyphen instances. Okay, AWS EC2 run hyphen instances is going to create an instance. Here we need to give the instance ID, then count, then instance type, whatever the type we want, key pair that need to be attached to the instance, then security group IDs, subnet IDs. So these all I'll provide to this instance what I required. Say here I'll go to that same. So from this existing instance itself, similar, I want the same instances. Then I'll take the same AMI. So this is the AMI ID I want to attach. And count how many instances you want, that count we need to specify. Instead of t2.micro, in this region, t2.micro may be not there. So that is the reason I'm checking a t3.micro something. The t3.micro we are going to take, and I'm going to choose this subnet ID. So I'm taking here t3.micro and subnet ID also I'm changing. Then I'm going to attach one key pair also. Say Ubuntu CLI is the key pair we want. I want to attach to this also same key pair. Okay, then I want to attach the security group also. I need to make sure 22 should be open for that. The same security group I'm providing to this. Okay, so based on these details, I'm going to create an EC2 instance. So now AWS EC2 run hyphen instances. What is the AMI ID? You want that image ID? How many number of instances? Instance type? Okay. So then key pair, security group, subnet. If you don't give the subnet, then it's going to use the default VPC and any of the subnet. If you don't use the security group, default security group, it uses. Okay. If you don't give the count, by default one we are going to get. Okay. If you don't attach a key pair, an instance may be created, but we can't connect to that instance. Now, here, this is the output format. What is the meaning of output format is once you run that command, what is the it need to display all these details that is printing in the form of output format. Okay, so that is the displaying those details in the form of. Then we got an instance ID. So this is the instance ID we have, and from this instance ID we can perform start operations, stop operations also we can perform. So we can perform start, stop operations also we can perform from this. Okay. So now if we want to work with the multiple profiles, then what we need to do is, so I want to create in the US East, then AWS configure with that another East profile you can create. By default, this is using in the EU North, North itself it is using. Okay, so it depends upon our requirement. So if we want to work with the multiple profiles, then we need to use, okay. It depends upon our requirement. So we need to provide multiple profiles we can create. Then here we got this AWS EC2 instance. And if you go and check in the EC2 instances also, that new instance is going to be provisioned. Okay, so this is the new instance. It's got provisioned. Still, it is in the initializing. Now, like we need to add a we didn't added the tag, right? Now we'll add a tag also. Naming tag will add. We can attach a block device. So just what I'm doing is I'm adding a tag here. So AWS EC2 create tag resource like instance ID. I'm attaching my instance ID. Instead of my instance, I'm giving here CLI instance. So now I have attached this CLI instance, and if I go and check here in my CLI instance, okay. So instead of CLI instance, have added new CLI. So these all the steps we can perform from the GUI, but with the CLI, more automation will come. We don't need to come to GUI to manage those operations. Okay, so we can manage it from the uh, this itself and list describe your instances. All the instances it will display. So describe hyphen. So that output format we have chosen in the form of JSON, right? That is the reason it is showing in the JSON format. Okay, and even here we can set the filters also, which you want specific, and that particular instance, if you want to delete, then AWS EC2 terminate instance, that instance ID, our instance ID, we need to specify. AWS EC2 terminate hyphen instances, that instance ID I am going to specify. Then automatically that instance is getting terminated also. That instance is getting terminated. Okay, so we'll see that instance. So now that instance maybe is in the shutting down and that's getting terminates. Okay, so now here how we pass those environment details? Sorry, how we pass those AWS credentials to the CLI? How we have passed those details? So those details we have passed through like AWS configure. So through the AWS configure, we have passed those details. Okay, so now in the same way, what we can perform is we can pass those details as the environment variables also. We can export those details as the environment details also we can pass. Okay, so we can pass them through the environment variables also we can pass. That is also the another method we can manage. Okay, so we can manage them through the environment variables also. I'm going to pass them. The authentication and say now here we have used IAM users. Okay, so those IAM users we are passing through AWS configure. Another method IAM roles also we can use. So once we create those, like here we have configured those AWS configure button. In that we specified access keys, secret keys, region and output format. And when we want to work with the multiple profiles, then AWS configure hyphen profile, and that profile name we need to specify. Then like which profile you want to use. If you don't specify any profile name, it uses the default itself. The another method is, so we can pass them through the environment variables also we can pass. So we can export those environment variables also. Now here what is that export AWS underscore access underscore key underscore ID export AWS underscore access underscore. So these instead of AWS configure also is exporting the same settings, but directly we can run these commands also. So here we are exporting three details. One is access key, second one is secret key, and the third one is the default region. Okay, the default region. So based on this, we can export those details also. We can export. Any doubts on that? Any doubts on this? So in the same way, try to create like BPC, IAM, all these like even auto scaling groups, load balancers, whatever the resources we have created through GUI, we can create even from the CLI wise also. And going forward, we are going to create it like even from the this one for the cloud formation we can provision, and even through the like this Terraform we can use, or using the Python Boto 3 also we can provision. For all these, the first step is through the GUI. Okay, so now like I am giving one assignment is, say try to create VPC resources through like VPC subnet, make a public and private subnet. That means you need to create one internet gateway, then one this route table, attach that route table to the EC2, sorry, no, not attach the route table to the subnet. Okay, add the routes, make it public route. So these are all the steps we have performed through the GUI. Try to provision them through the CLI itself. Then like S3 bucket. Okay, and through the S3 bucket, one assignment is make a static website through CLI itself. Through the CLI itself, try to provision that. So these all the resources we need to provision. Okay, then one more I have given, that is LAMP. So LAMP stands for Linux, Apache, MySQL, and PHP. So this is one of the tech framework most of the companies will use to deploy the website, but this is the old framework. But definitely we need knowledge on how to set up a LAMP also on the server. So we need to deploy sometimes PHP-based applications also, or on top of PHP we may have Laravel, Code Igniter. So for those also we required LAMP setup is required. Okay, so I shared that video also. So that's LAMP also we need to set up. Okay, but in this, instead of using this MySQL, now we are not keeping MySQL on the server. We are using RDS itself. In the RDS, we are taking that MySQL kind of thing. Okay, and instead of using all these Apache, all these instead of setup, a pre-configured setup also is deployable in the AWS. For that, we can. So we can deploy using a Beanstalk. Okay, so Beanstalk is also one of the AWS solution. So you no need to set up the complete PHP thing. Everything is already it's pre-configured. So everything is already pre-configured, and from that we are going to get that Beanstalk. We can get it. Okay, so these all the resources. Try to provision through CLI. And work on that Route 53 load balancers also try to provision again once again. VPC also revise once. All the videos also revise once again. Some gap came, right? So try to finish till that. Okay? Any doubts?